Thank you so much, guys. Um, now I'm pretty sure that all of you are part of a DevOps transformation in any short. That's also probably because you're watching this show, and maybe you're an engineer at a technology company, or maybe you're in a more like an old school type of large enterprise system, a large enterprise firm with legacy systems and old school process thinking. Or maybe you're that typical consultant selling flawless transformations. Everyone has some experiences with change initiatives towards the DevOps way of working. And I guess that, some organizations, they're just starting with that journey, and other organizations, they're moving towards elite or unicorn, performance levels. And some experiences you have may be good, some may be bad. So, what I'd like to do with you today is to share some lessons from past and current transformations by highlighting 5 ways to screw it up in epic ways. Now, I don't pretend that I know better than yourself what would work best for your company. I only want you to critically reflect on what you see happening just around you. And that's why I'll share some learnings with you and hope that you will be inspired by them and challenge and improve the DevOps initiatives around you. Now, this is a bit about me. In the past 25 years of my working life, I've been a software developer. I've worked in infrastructure operations. I've been in product management. I've been in IT support. So I've been working on the business side in IT dev and in IT ops. And over the past, let's say, 10 years, I've been helping organizations, both teams and leadership, to transform towards higher performance. And whether that's called agile, lean, DevOps, or digital transformation, that's of less importance. And before we dive into the 5 epic fails, as I'd like to call them, first let's make sure that we all have the same understanding of why we have such a thing called DevOps transformation. And basically, people in organizations, they engage in DevOps initiatives because it helps them to become, on the one hand, happier. So happier with, the products that we deliver as IT department, or as teams. So we have happier customers, but also we have happier professionals because we have less frustration from, a developer waiting for ops to put something live. We can do that ourselves. And less frustration at ops because there's a much better collaboration as well. The second is that we become better in what we deliver. So we have better code, we have less incidents, etc. Third one is that we have fast delivery cycles, so shorter lead times, but also shorter times to repair. And we also become smarter in how we deliver. So we have less repeating failures, we have better collaboration, and we have a lot better sharing. And last but not least, we also have safer environments and products. So we have less risks, and security is being built in as well. So we have happier, better, faster, smarter, and safer. And so now that we know why we talk about DevOps as a positive state to be in, we also need to have a shared understanding what it is. That's why I'd like to present this Venn diagram, and I'm sure that you've seen, a lot of DevOps scoping and DevOps definitions, etc. But this one, which I'd like to call the perfect storm, to me is all about, the contextual cooperation, actually, of multiple themes and perspectives that all come together at the same time. Hence, the perfect storm. So it's about people, process, and technology. So all of these practices and themes, they have contributed to the current value proposition of DevOps as we all feel them, and they can be considered as fundamental to evolve towards an effective set of DevOps principles and practices. So in your change initiatives, the success is in the contextual integration of all of these themes. So the contextual integration of lean, agile, architecture, ITSM, and operations, with also cloud and CI/CD, of course. And if you only do agile, for instance, you apply Scrum, that's not equal to the DevOps promise itself. So also, if you have a CI/CD pipeline in place, it does not equal a DevOps state of mind. I've seen a discussion on Twitter where someone said, well, actually, not just someone, but it was Patrick Dubois, and he said, Well, actually, technically, you could do DevOps without having CI/CD in place, without doing the automation part. But on the other end, you will have a flying wheel if you do have the automation in part. You will have people, cuddling each other all day, but you don't have, the real speed you want to get to and the real feedback loops. So again, the success of DevOps lies in combination of all of these elements, and to integrate all the three perspectives of people, process, and technology to a healthy balance. Yeah. So now that we know why DevOps is relevant and what it entails, we need to realize that DevOps transformations, above all, they're learning journeys. So organizations, also the ones you're in, they will struggle. People will resist, and technology will fail. So treating your DevOps initiatives as some kind of learning journeys, it will always benefit your journey in the end. On the other hand, it would be very wise to learn from other failures, especially from severe screw-ups. So which stories have some valuable lessons in them? Which aspects should we avoid? Or which management bullshit will actually really kill your DevOps initiatives instantly? So what I try to do is I try to collect some major learnings, which I've come up with in a few, let's say, 10 years, in the past 10 years. And I think that they're crucial to achieve, in the end, the better, faster, happier, smarter, and safer environments we want to get to. So here we go. We have 5 ways to screw up your DevOps transformation. And the first way to screw up your DevOps transformation is to keep calling it a DevOps transformation. Now, the thing is, the more we use certain fancy, shiny methods that people should be converting to, the less people will actually start and actually understand the why behind it. And that's exactly what's happening with DevOps. The shiny, fancy method or the shiny, fancy thing we want to achieve. People will hear the term DevOps and they will have an association with it. So they think, oh, let's put some developers and operators, together in one room. We have them use the same tools, preferably Kubernetes, and that's it, right? Then we're done. And what will happen next is that we will then get a new wave of DevSecOps and BizDevOps or whatever term you want to use. So as long as the people in your organization, and yeah, I'm also talking to you managers out there, as long as you don't really understand the why behind all of those names, then we're screwed. And I think that Johnny Cash gave us the best metaphor there is for this. Johnny Cash, one of the most famous singers we all know, he made a song called "A Boy Named Sue," one of his biggest hits, by the way, but a little less known than, for instance, Hurt. But "A Boy Named Sue," it tells a story about this boy who was named Sue by his dad, and he really blames his dad for it. So when he grows up, he's being mocked all the time. And all he can think about is, whenever I meet my dad, who gave me this terrible name, this awful name, then I'll kill him. And now, in his search, at one time, he enters a saloon in some kind of town, and there, he sees his dad. He knows it from the pictures. He hasn't seen him since his birth. And then they attack. He attacks him, and they get into a fight. And at the moment that they try to kill each other, the dad says, "Okay, so I gave you this name because I knew I wouldn't be there for you, and I wanted for you to be strong out there because it's a tough world, and I knew that you had to grow up by yourself. So that's why I gave you this name. So I'm really sorry. If you want to kill me, go ahead." And they hug each other, and it's all good, of course. But in the end, this is all about, it's not about the name itself, right? So what we need to know, we need to realize it's not about DevOps itself. It's about having everyone involved truly understand the why behind this. That's the most important thing in the end. And what we see around us is, a lot of cargo cult. So you see a lot of labeling here around us. So in all of the organizations I've been helping in the past 10 to 15 years, we see this labeling, and it will kill a lot of energy. So if you keep focusing on those short-term labels, instead of the long-term organizational goals behind it, the 5 things I mentioned, like safer, happier, etc., or then it will fail in the end. As a matter of fact, you will have a lot of change fatigue as well. All of the teams that I've been involved with, and the organizations, those teams came to me and said, Dave, we just started with Agile or Scrum or Safe or Less. So why should we now go with DevOps or BizDevOps or Lean IT? They're just following the labels then. So if they don't understand the why behind it and the relationships between all of those movements and the logical evolution there actually is there, then they just won't buy in. So if you really want to give a name to the change initiatives in your organization towards this new way of working, try relating it to your organization. So have the KLM way or the ING way or whatever. No one will start a religious war over that, as opposed to naming it DevOps or Agile, Lean or whatever. So stop naming it a DevOps transformation, please. It does not appeal to the actual goals you want to achieve. The second one, which is epic fail number 4, I'm counting down, as you know, to screw up your DevOps transformation is this one. If you really think that the transformation can best be facilitated by using a predefined linear roadmap, then you don't really understand the essence of complex changes. At the same time, I've been involved in too many transformations where this kind of scripted change, using deep analysis at the start, then analyzing the teams, analyzing the technology landscape, and then having a linear program plan to execute it. So what we then actually do is we move from A to B in the way of A. What we want to do is we want to move from A to B in the way of B. So we move towards an incremental way of working and an engineering culture by using a big bang and command control approach. That's really not the smartest thing you could do. It's like drinking bleach to prevent yourself from getting the coronavirus, right? So an example of this is I was involved in a mid-sized enterprise, and what they actually did was create a really large DevOps program. And instead of moving towards their goals in an incremental way, they used a really, really large transformation program full of rigid roadmaps, analysis, and big bang implementations. I think I don't need to tell you how this ended, but I think you know where I'm going. And where I'm going is actually this one, and it's. This is actually the place where we should be at. This is what we call Cynefin. It originates from Dave Snowden from Cognitive Edge. And this model, to me, is the most important model I've seen in the past, let's say, 10, 15 years. It really makes sense of your context, and it helps you to select the right strategies to deal with those problems. So what you see here is 4 main domains. 4 types of context that you can find yourself in. And we have the obvious domain, where you have real simple tasks that are being executed, a real simple context where you have a sense, categorize, respond way to deal with those problems. So you see what's going on, you have a standard response for that, and you deal with it. It's like standard changes or something like that. That's the obvious or clear domain. Then we have complicated, where we need information, we do an analysis, and based on the analysis, we have a right response. It's like deconstructing, a Ferrari and then, putting it together again. As long as you have the right information, the Ferrari up front and afterwards will respond exactly the same. And then we have complex environments where we have things that we cannot expect, things that we cannot know about, things that will, dynamically, move around continuously. And that's where we need an approach where we probe, sense, and respond, or we experiment, we see what's happening, and based on the validation of the experiments, we move on. And that's a complex environment where we find ourselves, in more and more. Of course, you also have chaotic contexts where you just act. You don't know what's happening. There's an emergency or whatever. There's also no constraints, so you just act. But the environment that we see ourselves in, especially where DevOps transformations are in, are complex environments. And people are involved, and people are unpredictable, by default. A lot of unknowable stuff happens continuously. So when you use roadmaps and analysis to deal with those complex events, you will fail. absolutely, guaranteed. And you will not be able to learn from it in a fast way as well. So what we need to do is we need to experiment and validate and learn all of the time. So if you're in the middle of a DevOps transformation and you see roadmaps and analysis all around you, and you cannot find experiments on those roadmaps, you better run, because you're in a bad place. The third one, the third way to really screw up your DevOps transformation is to pull open a can of agile coaches and let them fix, the DevOps transformation for you. So as we saw it before, DevOps is not the same as agile, and agile is not the same as DevOps. Yes, there's a lot of overlap, but they're not the same. And I've been in quite some transformations where this difference, was kind of ignored, and there was too little attention and budget available for real DevOps support. And when we revisit the perfect storm, which we saw before, we identify a number of layers of knowledge and skills that need to be developed by the teams and where they should be supported in. So we have things like way of working, which of course a lot of agile coaches know a lot about. But we also have organizational topics, including how do you deal with your suppliers, what about value, business value, risk and compliance, etc. We have a lot of stuff that have to do with the engineering culture and the leadership behind this. And of course, we have a lot of technical and operational practices that we see in DevOps, ranging from dev to quality to ops, monitoring, service management, etc. And also from security to chaos engineering, relentless monitoring, etc. So there's plenty of coaches who actually will understand this well, but there's also quite some agile coaches that do not get beyond the manifesto, Scrum, or Kanban. And we need to help them, and we need to really help the teams as well. And that's why we need to make sure that we don't screw up by ignoring this. And we need to take care of good, solid, knowledgeable DevOps support, like training, coaching, and also time for the teams to really improve their skills on all of these aspects. Now, the fourth one, which is epic fail number 2, is to stick with fluffy culture stuff. So we probably all have heard that culture is essential in DevOps, and I fully agree. We have the CALMS acronym, and C stands for culture. We start with that one in CALMS. Now, what I'd like to bring across now is that if you only focus on culture as the element to focus on, which is mostly about fluffy and high-level values and fancy buzzwords, you will never, and I repeat, never actually see a real behavioral change. So we need to be more specific. We need to make sure that the fluffy culture stuff becomes tangible, it becomes observable. And we're all DevOps folks, and we design our monitoring, and when we do that, we do this to measure how we're doing, how are we performing, so that we can improve incrementally. We can learn continuously with small steps. And the more generic and high level we set up the monitoring, the less feedback we get, and the less we're able to improve in small steps. So the very same goes for culture. So if you don't break culture and the values behind it down in small iterative steps, it will remain a large oil tanker, which cannot change direction anytime soon. So breaking down those cultural values into small tangible behaviors. If we look at all of the joint behaviors in an organization, that's something that you could call culture. But which are those behaviors then that you can define? And which behaviors are part of a DevOps way of working? If someone asks you the question, would you respond to these kind of terms? Would you talk about collaboration, empathy, customer driven, etc.? Okay, if you do, then you need to realize that all of these are very relevant statements, but none of them actually is real behavior. So this is what I actually see happening in a lot of transformations. We all agree on the same statements. No one actually knows what to do next. So we all think this is a great idea, but they're big and fluffy and they read like horoscopes. So everyone agrees, but no one really can use them. No one knows what is our next step then. How do we get there? So please try to define behavior in terms of, what do you see someone do? Or hear someone say, make it observable, make it measurable, make it small, tangible, and then you will be able to grow towards those new behaviors in really incremental steps. So a typical example here is we have, for instance, a prioritization, which is a really big topic. It's a big thing, and you can break it down into the fact that you want the product owners and the team members, they all agree that they jointly discuss to at least once per sprint. They do a joint prioritization of the functional and the non-functional work items, so that you make sure that you do not only do what the business asks you to do, but that you're always finding time to get rid of your technical debt, etc. So it's the joint prioritization in terms of a very tangible behavior that will get you to a next step. So if you pinpoint these desired behaviors, and maybe with your team you can put them on a team contract, put them on your team board or whatever, and then reflect on them all the time. Did we see this behavior last time? And if you did see it a few times, and then probably it was embedded. So you can select new desired behaviors. And this is how you move towards your desired way of working, desired behaviors with really small steps. Now, we've come to the final fail. We've come to the way to screw up your DevOps transformation, and which is actually the most effective way, I think. And it is to allow fake change in your environment. Now, whether it's your team or whether it's the entire organization, fake change from the board or from an engineer, we have a collective duty to call out fake change when we see it, and we need to get rid of it or it will blow up in your face. And what I also see happening in a lot of organizations currently is that the organizational structure is actually not really changed, because we see management or whatever, they think that virtual teams, they should be enough, because our people shouldn't be bothered by the silos that we created in the organization. What happens then is that we let old management behaviors stick, and we do not change old KPIs. Professionals, they will never be able to really take the end-to-end responsibility that they want to take. So I'd like to use a saying here, and it originates from one of the agile rock stars. It's Craig Larman. And he said, culture follows structure. So if you don't change your organizational structure, your culture also won't change. And the same goes for architecture, following Conway's law. So if you not only change your culture, but also your technology, it will be a reflection of your organizational structure. So not changing this to the needs of the end-to-end product mantra that you all want to achieve, you will fail in your transformation. And zooming in on the job of the organization's leadership, they need to change the system. They need to optimally facilitate the teams. So if the saying is, if a flower is broken, we don't fix the flower. We fix the environment for new flowers to emerge and to blossom. And if managers say that they do this, but actually do otherwise, so if they don't actually show the desired behavior themselves, then real change actually won't happen in your organization. And the Germans actually got a brilliant word for this type of fake change. They've called it Eisenbahn-Scheinbewegung. They actually combine two words which are not related together, and it's a fantastic new invention. So Eisenbahn is a railway, and Bewegung is a movement. So or a fake Scheinbewegung is a fake movement. So actually we have a railway fake movement, which is the feeling that you get when you're in the train, you're on a station, and the train next to you is moving. And you have the feeling that you're moving yourself. And that's exactly the fake change that we see around us. So we see other people changing and moving, and we immediately have the feeling that we're moving or changing ourselves. But actually we don't. We're just relabeling, right? So we really also want to make sure that if we allow this kind of fake change to happen in the organization, we will never be able to move towards the desired way of working, towards the desired culture, towards the desired goals we want to achieve. A great example, final example, is what happened at a client, and management was really used to pushing work, in the teams, and they started to work with SAFe. So they thought that would fix everything. Well, let me tell you a secret, that's not true. It doesn't fix everything. So in the first quarter, they pushed more than 150 features into one quarter towards the teams, and only half of the features were actually done. And at the end, what they did is, in the second quarter, they pushed almost 200 features into the team's planning, and they asked for a confidence vote to the group. Most of the people, indicated that they had little confidence here. And what did management do? Actually, nothing. So they kept their goals as they were, which means that the teams, they will very likely be frustrated at the end of the next quarter. So management didn't change their behavior, which means to some kind of, fake change. And at the end, it will be the teams that are paying the bill for this. This is what we call Eisenbahn-Scheinbewegung. Now, I try to give you some warnings, or at least some learnings from other transformations. Don't worry if you're not able to tackle all of them at once. Failure will be your friend. So make sure you address the failures as learning opportunities. And, transformations, they're complex by nature. So it means that we're on an experimental journey together. And we need to make sure that we keep focusing on incremental changes. So when you return to your office, or stay at your home office for the time being, I hope that you have some ammunition to call out fake change when you see it. And you have your teams and leaders also embrace real DevOps behaviors. And you make sure that room is made for learning and improvement. But most of all, that you keep focusing on experiments, because they are the real primary vehicle for achieving complex transformations. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you not only learned about how to screw up your DevOps transformation, but actually learned about how to not screwing it up too much. Do we have any questions?
Yes. Thank you so much, Dave, for this awesome presentation. You spoke to my heart as a transformation consultant, especially the culture follows structure and the Eisenbahn-Scheinbewegung, which is a very dangerous anti-pattern indeed. So I think we have room for one question, correct, Andy?
Yeah, definitely. So we just have time for one. We're a little bit over time. We have a couple of questions, but I'll just pick one for now. This one's from Pravar. Is 100% DevOps transformation ever possible? And is SRE the future of DevOps?
Okay, two questions. 100% transformation, is it possible? Actually, that would imply that DevOps is, an end state, which I don't believe it is. So DevOps is just a way to move towards another end state. So we will never be truly finished with this. It will be a continuous journey. And when we are moving on, we will have new terms, new labels, etc. So you will never be 100% ready. The moment that you think that you're ready, you lost the war, actually. And the other one is SRE, the future of DevOps. SRE is a really important addition to the DevOps mindset and the DevOps way of thinking. But it is not, it is not the same. I could have included in the Venn diagram as well. So there's a lot of overlap, because having site reliability engineers, doing the stuff, from the operational point of view, more having software development mindset and engineering mindset in the operations part. That's a great addition to having a DevOps way of working in the end. So it's more complementary than I would say that it's a consequence.